Hello, Assalamualaikum. Untuk hari ini, today I'm going to continue with the series of lectures. And we are still on the topic of police investigation. This is the last topic, the last subtopic under the topic of police investigations. And the topic today is regarding the rights of an accused person to obtain or to get a copy of statements or other evidence from the prosecution before a trial. So, the accused has been charged. Before the trial begins, what are the documents or either evidence that the prosecution has to give to the defense? For the purpose of the defense might want to have a copy of certain documents or evidence or whatever, because these are evidence against him. So this evidence against him, if they can obtain it beforehand, before the trial, it will help them in preparing for their defense. So you have on one hand the interest of the defense to prepare their defense, the interest of the accused person to prepare their defense. In order to prepare their defense, they have to have the copy of not just the charge against him, but also documents that's going to be used in trial. Meaning that documents that's going to be tendered, that's going to be tendered by the prosecution as evidence against him. So, boleh bayangkan dalam satu perbicaraan, pihak pendakwa akan kemukakan keterangan terhadap tertuduh. So, kalau tertuduh boleh dapat keterangan ini sebelum perbicaraan, dia boleh prepare defense dia. So that's on behalf of the defense. Tetapi on the other hand, pada sebelah pihak lagi, what the prosecution have will be evidence contains in documents, evidence against the accused, like documents or statement of witnesses. Who are the witnesses? What are their evidence, their statement? If all this given to the accused before a trial, or the accused have access before a trial, there is a possibility of tampering, kacau ganggu, possibility of this evidence being disturbed, witnesses being disturbed, evidence being destroyed, whatsoever. So there is these two opposing interests. So how did the law deal with this situation? So you will find out at the end of this lecture. The law attempts to make or create a parameter, create a sempadan to balance between these two interests. To what extent evidence can be handed over, or to what extent the defense have access to obtain evidence in order to prepare their defense, what is fair to them. At the same time, how do we protect the interests of the prosecution in the sense that their evidence are not tampered with, not disturbed before the trial. So we begin with the rights of the accused to obtain documents. So yeah, I'm referring to page 184, page 184 of your textbook. So under the topic, the rights of accused to get a copy of documents. So what are the documents that the accused have got a right to, or the accused have got a right to access, or a right to have a copy of the document before the trial. Of course, during the trial, this document will be tendered as evidence. But before it's been tendered in evidence, the defense may want to have a look at it in order to prepare their defense. So to what extent, what are the documents that can be given to the accused before trial for them to obtain, or for them to have access to? The first one we issue on police report. first information report and FIR. It has been stated before this in the previous lecture that an accused person has got a right to the police report because it's a report against him. A report against him contains the offense that he is said to have committed, so it's the basis of the charge against him, so he has a right to know what is the case against him. He has got the right to know what's the complaint against him, what's the charge against him, so he has a right to have a copy of the first information report. So first information report are usually given to the accused person before a trial because he has a right to it. But issue arose because, as I've mentioned before this, some first information report are not really first information in the true sense of the word. The police are investigating, and after they have identified the person, when they begin their investigation, they may not know who is the accused person, who is the suspect. But after investigation, then only they identify who is to be charged, who is to be accused with the offense. So they will go and arrest that person. So when they go and arrest that person, the police will make an arrest report. So question arises whether that arrest report is a first information report or not. And also there are cases where police go on a raid based on information. Based on the information received, the police raided a place to look for an offense, to arrest an accused person, whether it's a drug case or maybe some other cases. The police go on the raid, and after the raid, they've arrested certain people, certain person, and they lodge a report. They make a report saying that pada tarikh-tarikh sekian, satu serbuan telah dibuat ke atas rumah di alamat sini dan telah membuat tangkapan ke atas orang bernama so and so. So question arises whether the accused has also got a right to obtain a copy of this arrest report, this report that was made. Basically, not really the first information that the police get. So why would the defense wants a copy of all these reports? Because in these reports will contain facts, and the defense can use this fact for purpose of their defense, either for purpose of their defense to contradict the prosecution officers. For example, the arresting officer will come to court and give evidence how he arrests. So if you have the arrest report with you, you can make comparison this evidence in court, whether it tallies with the police report, the arrest report or not. So that's an issue which the defense would have an interest. So what did the court say about this sort of report, the arrest report? So let's look at the cases that was referred to in the textbook. Page 184, an arrest report is not an FIR and hence is not admissible under section 108A of the CPC. This implies that the accused is not entitled to the arrest report before the trial. So in the case of Pendakwa Raya against Kang Ho So, Justice Shankar opined that the arrest report was not a first information report, thus not admissible under section 108A of the CPC. Thus, failure by the prosecution to adduce the arrest report as evidence was not fatal to the prosecution's case. Okay. There is a different issue here that I from the one that I mentioned. I mentioned just now about whether the accused can get a copy of that report, the police report or arrest report, before the case, before the trial. Here the issue is whether during the case itself, semasa perbicaraan, when the prosecution attempted to produce an arrest report. So question is, can that arrest report be admitted or not? Because section 108A allows for a first information report, FIR, to be admitted. But what about an arrest report? So other than the question that I mentioned just now, there's also the question of whether can the prosecution produce the arrest report. That's number one. Number two, whether the accused, the defense, can ask for the arrest report to be produced. Or the third is, when an arrest report was not produced, will the prosecution's case be affected? Okey, itu antara contoh-contoh persoalan yang boleh timbul daripada arrest report. So dalam kes Kang Ho Soo ni di-issue, arrest report, uh, apparently there's an attempt by the prosecution to produce the arrest report, but it was objected to apparently in this case, and the court said that it's not admissible because it's not a first information report as in under section 108A. Dalam kes the next case Ismail bin Atan, Justice James Fung ruled that an arrest report is not FIR and is not admissible under section 108A of the CPC. Thus, the defense could object to its admissibility. So here, the prosecution wanted to tender the arrest report. Why? Because it can support the evidence of the arresting officer. Arresting officer make a report, make an arrest, and then come back, makes a report, and later in court, he will inform the court that he made an arrest, and to support this evidence as to what happened during the arrest, the prosecution wants to produce the arrest report. But in both these cases, the court say that it cannot be produced. It cannot be produced as evidence because it's not FIR. Okay, that's the issue of when the prosecution wants to tender. Okay. Just let me make a note here. Now let's look at the next case in case of Ibrahim Arifin. Here is the defense who ask for the report. Tadi the prosecution wants to tender, but the court says no, you cannot tender because it's not a first information report, it's an arrest report. So what happened in the case of Ibrahim bin Arifin? The next case, in Ibrahim bin Arifin, the accused was charged with trafficking under the Dangerous Drug Act, Section 39B. At the end of the cross-examination of the seventh prosecution witness, the defense counsel applied for a copy of the police report lodged by the seventh prosecution witness. The seventh prosecution witness is the arresting officer here. The objection by the deputy public prosecutor was overruled by the court, where Justice Vincent Ng said, JC at that time, the complete removal of the original provision section 113 of the CPC and its replacement with a new provision has the effect of clearly and decisively removing the pre-amendment distinction between first information report and non-first information report. Thus, there is no justification for the refusal by the learned DPP to supply a copy of PW7's report to the defense on the ground that there is no justification for the refusal of the learned DPP to supply a copy of PW7's report to the defense on the ground that the same is not first information report for any other reason. It's also a public document by virtue of section 35 of the Evidence Act. So here the situation is a bit different. Tadi prosecution yang nak tender, court kata tak boleh because of the objection. The court agrees with the objection, tak boleh because it's not first information report. Now it's the defense asking for the prosecution to produce the arrest report. And here the court says that the prosecution objected in this case to produce the arrest report, which is not wrong based on the decision in Kang Song Ho and also Ismail bin Atan. But the court here also agrees with the defense, saying that because of the amendment dia kata to section 1131 of the CPC, arrest report dengan first information report tak ada beza, there is no distinction, meaning that the arrest report is also a first information report. 1131 is actually about statements of the police, statement by accused and all, and tak tahu macam mana dia punya interpretation. Court punya interpretation dia kata there is no difference between first information report and arrest report, therefore the defense has a right to the copy of the arrest report, just like the defense has got the right to the copy of the first information report. They refer to section 113. Section 1131 is actually about statements to police officers, which is not admissible in evidence except by the defense, kalau defense nak guna. Okay, the same judge juga dalam kes Lee and Kui. In this case, the accused was charged with being in possession of firearms without lawful excuse contrary to section 57(1)(a) of the ISA 1960, which dah tak ada sekarang. During cross-examination of the third prosecution witness, the defense counsel applied for the police report lodged by a third prosecution witness. The court held following the decision in Ibrahim Arifin, the accused is entitled to a copy of the arrest report as there is no distinction between FIR and the first information report. So again, the same judge dalam satu lagi case kata there is no distinction between first information report dengan arrest report, and therefore the defense is entitled to a copy. Tetapi kes-kes lain macam Kang Suho, Ismail Hatan, dia differentiate first information report dengan arrest report. So kalau it's not a first information arrest report, means that it's not admissible as evidence, and therefore the defense has got no right to obtain a copy of it. Okay, tetapi I have to say here lah, decision Lee Engkui dengan Ibrahim Arifin ni appears to be not the popular decision lah. Sebab dalam kes Balachandran, Augustine Paul mentioned where the learned judge held the FIR is absolutely different from non-FIR as they were distinct purposes. Nevertheless, the view of Augustine Paul in Balachandran to PP above must be mentioned where the learned judge held that FIR is absolutely different from non-FIR as it serves a distinct purpose. So dalam kes Balachandran, Justice Augustine Paul dia lebih kepada decision dalam kes Ismail Hatan dan juga Kang Suho, yang mana arrest report dengan first information report tak sama, dia for different purposes. So kalau tak sama and different purposes, the accused person has got no right to a copy of it, and the prosecution also cannot tender it as evidence as far as the arrest report is concerned. Only FIR can be admitted as evidence, and if it can be admitted as evidence, the accused person is entitled to a copy of it. So faham kan? Kalau tak faham nanti boleh tanya saya lebih lanjut. So dalam kes Balachandran ni, decision is by the Court of Appeal. So it should prevail lah over High Court decision dalam kes Lee Engkui dengan Ibrahim Arifin. Okey. Seterusnya berkaitan dengan statement to the police. Apa dia statement to the police? Statement to the police are all statements made to the police. A statement, pernyataan. A statement usually refers, a statement atau pernyataan usually refers to a written statement recorded down by the police after interviewing a person, dah selalunya witness lah, whether a witness or accused person, and it is a statement taken under section 112. Apabila polis interview, recordkan statement daripada saksi itu, dia dibuat mengikut peruntukan section 112, dan the statement to the police also referred to as a 112 statement. A 112 statement meaning a statement taken down by the police, which as I mentioned before, will be compiled in a file and will become statement by that witness, and that witness will be called to court and will give evidence to court based on that statement. Statement yang dia bagi pada polis itulah menjadi alasan untuk keputusan mendakwa dan sebagainya. Kalau dalam statement tu dia memberi keterangan, dia menyatakan bahawa orang dia nampak OKT telah melakukan itu ini, berdasarkan apa yang dia kata, itulah yang akan menjadi asas untuk tindakan ke mahkamah seterusnya. So bila sampai ke mahkamah dipanggil memberi keterangan, saksi itu sepatutnya memberikan keterangan yang sama sebagaimana dalam statement kepada polis tadi. Kalau dia kata nampak OKT itu buat itu ini, di mahkamah dia akan kata nampak OKT itu buat itu ini. So kalau dia menceritakan perkara yang berlawanan dan sebaliknya, maka dia boleh dituduh memberi keterangan palsu seperti yang telah saya beritahu dalam lecture sebelumnya. So isu di sini adalah boleh tak statement ni dikemukakan kepada statement itu sendiri, the physical statement itu dikemukakan sebagai keterangan di mahkamah. Itu isu yang pertama. Yang keduanya, apabila statement tu was made by the accused person himself. Semasa siasatan, dia belum lagi ditangkap, belum dituduh lagi, dia ambil dulu statement dia. Selepas dia ambil statement dia, di bawah section 112 ataupun 113, depending on the case, because the old 113 actually adalah digunakan untuk ambil statement daripada suspek. Tapi sekarang ni 113 dah tak ada, so boleh statement yang diambil daripada suspek pun will be a 112 statement. So sesiapa sahaja yang potential witness akan diambil statement di bawah section 112. So apabila dia ambil statement di bawah section 112 ni daripada tertuduh, boleh tak kalau tertuduh sendiri ingin kemukakan statement itu ke mahkamah sebagai keterangan? Okey, untuk apa seorang keterangan seorang tertuduh may want to tender his own evidence to court because whatever he said to the police boleh support dia punya defense, kan? He can say that this is not an afterthought. What I told the court today is the same as what I told the police when my statement was taken by the police. So dia nak kemukakan statement by the police itu untuk sokong apa yang dia kata. Atau mungkin juga dalam keadaan yang mana pihak defense mengatakan bahawa saksi itu berbohong, saksi pendakwaan berbohong. Semasa perbicaraan, mungkin dalam cross examination, pihak defense mungkin akan mengatakan bahawa saksi ini telah bercakap bohong. Apa yang diberitahu kepada polis adalah lain daripada apa yang dikatakan pada mahkamah ini. So dia memohon untuk melihat statement yang telah diberikan oleh saksi itu kepada pihak polis. So ini ada dua keadaan. So keadaan lain adalah kita tengok dalam kes dalam you punya textbook ni, keadaan yang mana satu yang diceritakan at page 186 dalam kes Kos UB against Ketua Polis Kuala Lumpur. Kenapa against Ketua Polis Kuala Lumpur? Sebab dalam kes Kos UB ni dia memohon untuk mendapatkan dokumen-dokumen ini untuk digunakan dalam defense sebelum bicara. Sebelum dia dibicarakan, dia mohon kepada mahkamah untuk mahkamah mengeluarkan perintah supaya dia diberikan dokumen-dokumen ini oleh pihak yang menyimpan dokumen. This is section 51 lah yang akan kita bincang sebentar lagi mengenai section 51, because apa yang persoalan yang saya bangkitkan ini berkait juga dengan section 51. So dalam kes QCUB ini, accused persons were jointly charged with dangerous drug offence under Dangerous Drug Act 1952 before Sessions Court. Defence counsel applied to be supplied with a copy of the caution statement, but the Sessions Court did not make such an order. The defence applied to the High Court for a ruling, and then Lord President Sufyan, sitting as a High Court judge at that time, opined that the accused had an interest, was entitled a copy of the caution statement. So ini berkaitan dengan caution statement. Caution statement bermakna statement yang diambil di bawah Section 113 of the OCPC atau Section 37 of the Dangerous Drug Act, yang mana seperti yang telah saya sebutkan sebelum ni lah, a person, a suspect when being arrested, given a caution, and after given a caution, a statement will be recorded from him kalau dia nak bagi statement. So this statement recorded by the police from an accused person under Section 37 ataupun Section 113, it can be either used by the prosecution as evidence against the accused person himself. Ini saya dah cerita sebelum ni, how a caution statement taken by the police now nak digunakan sebagai keterangan terhadap tertuduh itu sendiri, nak dikemukakan sebagai keterangan terhadap tertuduh itu. And boleh juga timbul keadaan yang mana pihak defense sendiri yang nak gunakan keterangan yang diberikan kepada pihak polis sebagai keterangan untuk sokong dia punya defense. Contoh saya bagi tadi lah, dalam bila statement masa dia kena tangkap, polis ambil statement bawah Section 113 after giving caution, minta dia bagi pernyataan. Dalam pernyataannya dia kata, saya tidak bersalah, saya tidak melakukan perkara itu. So dia nak tunjukkan ke mahkamah, dia mengatakan perkara yang sama untuk sokong defense dia di mahkamah nanti bahawa dia tidak bersalah. So when I say a caution statement, statement 113 section 37, ingat lagi rule against self-incrimination dulu, ia mungkin mempunyai pengakuan dan dia juga mungkin mengandungi penafian. So a statement can be two type, whether inculpatory ataupun exculpatory. Exculpatory maknanya dia mengatakan dia tak terlibat, dia tak bersalah. Bila dia bagi pernyataan pada polis, dia kata dia tak buat, dia tak salah. Exculpatory punya statement. Satu lagi inculpatory. Inculpatory ni mana dia mensabitkan diri dia lah. Bila dia memberikan statement, dia kata, yalah saya mengaku, saya memang ada lakukan sedemikian. Ini statement kepada pihak polis. So, pihak polis nak gunakan pengakuan dia tu terhadap dia dan pendakwaan akan cuba kemukakan that caution statement. So tu dipanggil inculpatory punya statement. So kita bincang sekejap lagi pasal inculpatory punya statement. But caution statement tak semestinya work against the accused person. It can only work against, it can also works for the accused person if it's an exculpatory statement where dia tak mengaku. Dia boleh gunakan statement itu untuk mengatakan, untuk menyokong defense dia. Okay. So there are always these two type of statement. So dalam kes Kus Yubi ni, he asked for his caution statement before trial. Sebelum dia dah tuduh, dia nak tengok, dia nak satu salinan pernyataan yang dia buat kepada pihak polis itu. So of course this will be useful to the counsel lah. Nanti kalau jadi defense counsel, you nak tengok apa yang nak gua aku cakap dekat pihak polis ni. To prepare your defense, you need to know what your client say to the police when their statement was taken. To prepare for the defense in court, to prepare for the trial in court. The defense counsel also needs to know what did the accused say to the police. So they want a copy of that statement. In this case, a caution statement. So bila Sessions Court tak bagi, dia pergi ke High Court. High Court say that the accused had an interest in it and is entitled to a copy of the caution statement. Ini sebelum perbicaraan. Permohonan yang dibuat sebelum perbicaraan terhadap ketuduh tu, dia mohon satu salinan. So court kata kena bagi. So based on case QCUB ini, before the trial, the accused person has got a right to his own caution statement. Okay. Kemudian dalam kes Muhammad Hazrin against Mat Sari against PP tahun 2003, accused was charged with drug trafficking and a caution statement recorded from him. Again, caution statement. Bila caution statement ni, it means statement 113, old 113 atau statement 37DA di bawah Dangerous Drug Act, statement 53 ataupun statement 16 Kidnapping Act. Statement by accused person yang ada caution. Caution yang kata anda tidak wajib untuk menjawab apa-apa soalan, tapi apa-apa yang anda nyatakan sama ada menjawab soalan ataupun tidak boleh digunakan sebagai keterangan. Nah, that's a caution. So, ini adalah statement yang diambil daripada suspek, daripada orang yang kena tuduh. So, dalam kes ni, accused applied to be supplied with a true copy of the first caution statement. The High Court held that the first caution statement was a public document as defined in Section 74 Evidence Act. The applicant has a right to inspect it and be supplied with a true copy of the caution statement upon payment of necessary fees before the commencement of the trial pursuant to Section 76. The applicant had an interest in the caution statement and required a copy to prepare for his defense. Okay, no problem, sama macam QCB. Sama juga dalam kes Abdul Ghani Ishaq. Proven and opined that the accused is entitled to a caution of uncautioned statement which are public documents. Bukan saja caution, also uncautioned. Uncautioned ni maksudnya statement luar Section 112 lah yang accused bagi. Tak semestinya seorang accused itu bila kena tangkap, atau tak semestinya seorang itu ditangkap baru jadi accused person. Seorang itu mungkin belum ditangkap lagi pun dah bagi statement kepada pak polis dah. So statement yang dibagi itu selalu bawa one to because it's not yet the suspect or it's not been arrested yet. So even uncautioned statement pun dia boleh dapat. So all this dah tak jadi isu lagi dah. Tak ada kontroversi kat sini. Memang the accused person are entitled to copies of documents, copies of statements that he made to the police sebelum perbicaraan. Sebab ini dah dimasuk dalam pindaan kepada Section 51, 51A dan the new Section 113. Semua dia dah ada hak dah. Because the amendment to the CPC, Section 51A, Section 113, dibuat mengikut peruntukan atau mengikut keputusan-keputusan daripada kes-kes yang di-refer di sinilah. Seterusnya, there is a case of Huzi bin Hassan against Ketua Polis Daerah Johor Bahru. However, if there are security reasons or it is an intelligence report, then the accused is not entitled to document as decided in Huzi bin Hassan. So, dia sebut kat sini tentang intelligence statement. Apa benda tu intelligence statement? So, statements taken from the accused person or suspect after the arrest by the police, like I said, it could be, kalau dia belum lagi jadi suspect, belum dituduh, belum ditangkap, it could be a 112 statement. Statement section 112. If he's been arrested, it can be a section 113 statement. These are statements that he gave to the police yang polis ambil dari court. But there is another statement which is not for the purpose of court, not for the purpose of public, not for the purpose of trial, which is called an intelligence statement. Ini adalah statement untuk kegunaan pihak polis sendiri. Pihak polis misalnya tangkap seorang anggota pertubuhan haram, a gangster, or a member of a syndicate, a drug trafficking syndicate. Polis nak tahu tentang aktiviti dia, tentang kumpulan dia, tentang latar belakang dia, tentang jenayah-jenayah lalu yang telah dilakukan, siapa rakan-rakan dia. Nak dapatkan maklumat tentang sindiket dan sebagainya, polis akan ambil apa yang dipanggil intelligence statement. Nama pun for the purpose of intelligence. So, boleh tak accused person atau sesiapa accused person apply for dia punya intelligence statement ni to be supplied to him so that he can produce in court for the purpose of his defense? So dalam kes ni mahkamah kata tak boleh lah, because these are not covered by 112, 113, not covered by the decision under QCUB dan sebagainya, Anti Gomez dan sebagainya. This is ada melibatkan public interest, kepentingan awam, because dalam intelligence statement tu mungkin ada information yang sensitif, yang mungkin berbahaya kepada orang lain. Dia mungkin menyebutkan tentang penglibatan rakan-rakan orang-orang tertentu yang mungkin menyebabkan bahaya ke atas orang itu. So it doesn't cover intelligence statement. Now the other statement is statement by co-accused. Dalam kes Abdul Ghani Ishak, Wan Jahaya also ruled that the accused has not entitled to a statement of a co-accused who is an incompetent witness against the accused. Lebih daripada seorang tertuduh. You kena tuduh. You punya kawan pun kena tuduh. Can you get a copy of the statement made by your co-accused? You punya kawan, you punya rakan sebenarnya. So dalam Ghani Ishak, no, cannot lah. You are only entitled to your own statement, but not the statement made by your co-accused to the police. Kenapa dia nak statement co-accused ni? Because to prepare for defense. Defense counsel nak tahu apa benda yang co-accused ni kata, apa yang dia cakap, atau apa yang dia akan cakap ke mahkamah. Adakah dia akan membabitkan anak guam dia? So you might want to see. So court tak bagi. Now ni yang saya sebut tadi tentang statement by the accused person. Now statement by prosecution witness, statement daripada saksi-saksi. Before trial, the accused is not entitled to a copy of statement by a prosecution witness for fear of tampering with witnesses as decided in case Husdi. Case Husdi tahun 1979, dah lama dah. In this case, the accused applied for copies of the caution statement made by the accused and statements made by prosecution witnesses during investigations. Apa dia statement by witnesses during investigation? 112 statement. So dalam kes ni dia apply for 112 statement of all those saksi-saksi yang telah direkodkan percakapannya oleh pihak polis di bawah section 112, and those person will be witnesses during the trial against him. So kalau dia dapat section 112, kalau dia dapat statement 112 tu, dia dah tahu apa yang witness tu akan cakap, akan witness tu beritahu mahkamah, apa yang witness keterangan yang akan dikeluarkan oleh saksi-saksi ni terhadap diri dia. So Syed Othman, Federal Court Judge masa tu, sitting in the High Court, he's a Federal Court tapi dia sitting at the High Court, allow a copy of the caution statement to be supplied to the accused but not statements of prosecution witnesses as there might be tampering of witnesses. Ini yang saya mention tadi, interest prosecution nak kena jaga juga. You cannot simply bagi statement of witnesses to the defense. Yes, statement tu defense boleh guna untuk prepare dia punya defense, tapi dia boleh juga menyebabkan saksi-saksi tu diganggu. Defense dah tahu dah siapa akan menjadi saksi terhadap diri dia. Dan kemungkinan ada gangguan ke atas saksi-saksi itu semua. So it cannot be supplied. It is only entitled to a caution statement. A caution statement is statement under 113 macam saya sebut tadi, which was made by that person, by the accused person himself to the police. While during trial, the accused is entitled to a copy of statement by prosecution witness for the purpose of impeachment as decided in federal court dalam kes Husdi. So, for purpose of impeachment, boleh. Tetapi apapun, this decision dalam kes Husdi ini telah pun di-amended jadi section 113 yang baru. Section 113 yang baru, kalau you tengok, we'll discuss about this. Saya pun dah sebut banyak kali sebelum ni, tapi saya sebut lagi sekali so that you remember. Bahwa the new section 113, first of all, there's no statement made to a police officer be admissible in evidence. Semua statement kepada pihak polis tidak boleh dikemukakan sebagai keterangan di mahkamah. That's basic. Statement 112 lah. Statement 112 yang polis record daripada saksi-saksi itu semua ni tak relevan, tak boleh diterima sebagai keterangan di mahkamah. Kecualian dia yang pertama, for the purpose of impeachment. Mana-mana pihak yang nak impeach saksi tu boleh ask for the witness statement ataupun pernyataan yang dibuat kepada pihak polis. Kenapa? Supaya boleh buat perbandingan antara keterangan dia di mahkamah ini dengan pernyataan dia kepada pihak polis. Ada contradiction ke tidak, consistent ke tidak, sama ke tidak, ada material contradiction ke tidak. So for purpose of impeachment, either by the prosecution or by the defense. Satu lagi, for accused to support dia punya defense. Ini statement accused sendiri lah. Accused sendiri ada buat statement to the police and dia nak kemukakan statement itu to support dia punya defense. This I mentioned earlier. So under 113 to the new 113 boleh dia kemukakan pernyataan dia sendiri di mahkamah. And then the third is semasa identification period dengan section 32 lah. Section 32 is under the Evidence Act. Is when a witness unable to come to court, statement dia kepada pihak polis boleh diberikan ke mahkamah sebab dia sendiri dah tak mampu datang mahkamah sebab dah meninggal ke, tak dapat dicari, tak dapat dikesan dan sebagainya. And identification period. Sebab dalam identification period ada pernyataan-pernyataan yang saksi akan kata kepada pihak polis. Saksi akan tunjukkan ya itu orangnya. So polis kena beritahu mahkamah bahawa that witness told me he is the person. So kalau ikut section the rule, the general rule, apa yang police conducting the identification period to say that this witness told me is hearsay and not admissible because it's a statement made to a police officer. So kecualikan boleh diterima di bawah section 113 yang baru ni juga. And akhir sekali of course lah when the statement itself concerned with a charge, meaning that perjury lah, memberi keterangan palsu, nak buktikan keterangan palsu, that 112 statement sendiri diperlukan, so ia boleh dikemukakan. So ini adalah keadaan-keadaan yang mana di bawah the new section 113 where a statement by witness ataupun by accused person can be admitted into court. Other than that, statement by a witness cannot be used as evidence. Okay. Seterusnya, laporan kimia, chemist report. Boleh dapat? Boleh. Secara umumnya boleh. Chemist report selalunya be supplied to the other side even before the trial. Tetapi boleh tak dikemukakan dalam keterangan. Dikatakan di sini, if the public prosecutor gives a copy of the chemist report at least 10 days before the trial, then the chemist report is admissible. Then the chemist report, section 39 provides that a maker is coming to court to give evidence, then the accused is not entitled to the chemist report. However, if the police prosecutor gives a copy of the chemist report at least 10 days before the trial, then the chemist report is admissible as evidence. Kalau you remember section 399 CPC, kalau nak kemukakan chemist report saja tanpa memanggil ahli kimia itu sendiri, kena bagi notis 10 hari sebelum bicara. Bagi notis 10 hari sebelum bicara, tak perlu panggil ahli kimia, boleh panggil boleh kemukakan laporan kimia sahaja, the report by the chemist. Tetapi kalau tidak diberikan laporan kimia itu sebelum 10 hari sebelum bicara, then the chemist himself will come to court and give evidence. So, kalau nak panggil chemist tu tak payahlah nak bagi that chemist report to the accused person before trial, because we are calling the chemist, and the accused pun tak boleh nak minta sebab the chemist is coming to give evidence. Dia akan cross examine. Tetapi kalau defense yang nak kemukakan, dia diberi dan dia nak dikemukakan, and chemist tu still bagi evidence, boleh juga. This is not really an issue nowadays lah, sebab dari segi praktikal sekarang ni chemist report tu memang prosecution bagi je. After all, it makes no difference. The chemist is coming evidence, tapi police report tu pun dia bagi juga sebelum pembicaraan. Because tak ada apa isu kat situ. There is no issue there, because whatever in the chemist report is the same as what the chemist is going to tell the court during evidence. So there is no report, tak ada isu kat situ. Now, investigation diary, sketch plan and photos. Ini lain. Basic, accused is not entitled to the investigation diary, sketch plan and photos before the trial as they are privileged documents. Ini semua benda yang ada di dalam investigating papers. Macam saya sebut sebelum ni, dalam IP investigation papers will contain the evidence that the prosecution will contain evidence which will be evaluated by the prosecution, and prosecution will decide based on the contents of the IP sama ada to prefer a charge or not. So the contents of the IP are all sulit, secret. So the contents of the IP may contain so many things like it be used intra or not used intra, and whatever in this IP are considered as privileged document, termasuklah investigation diaries, sketch plan, photograph. Kenapa? Because this thing may contain maklumat-maklumat yang sensitif, yang berkait dengan perkara-perkara lain yang tidak berkenaan dengan tertuduh dan sebagainya. Now, Section 51. Dah pernah sebut tentang Section 51, kuasa mahkamah untuk keluarkan summons for certain people to produce documents. Dan ini termasuk juga defense nakkan dokumen. Defense kalau dia nakkan dokumen daripada pendakwaan, dia boleh buat permohonan kepada mahkamah di bawah Section 51 for the court to issue an order or summons for the pendakwaan or the witnesses for the pendakwaan to produce the document or to give it to the defense. Because it applies also to the prosecution, to the defense. Sebelum ni saya bercerita tentang Section 51 where the prosecution yang perlukan keterangan daripada pihak-pihak tertentu. Prosecution pergi ke mahkamah memohon saman daripada mahkamah untuk pihak-pihak tertentu kemukakan certain dokumen daripada bank misalnya, daripada syarikat-syarikat korporat misalnya. Now the defense also can do the same thing, mohon kepada prosecution untuk berikan dokumen itu kepada dia dengan memohon kepada mahkamah. So dalam keadaan macam mana mahkamah akan benarkan, dalam keadaan macam mana mahkamah tidak benarkan. Okay. Necessary for any investigation, query or trial, other proceedings, Section 51, CPC empowers any court to issue summons to the person, either the accused or the prosecution. Dua-dua, sebab Section 51 ni applies to both accused or prosecution to produce a document or things stated in the summons, or to any police officer may issue a written order to person to produce document or things stated in order. Police officer pun boleh issuekan order untuk pihak-pihak keluarkan dokumen untuk tujuan siasatan. Because Section 51 ni perintah mahkamah, prosecution or defense boleh apply kepada perintah mahkamah. So defense pun boleh apply kepada mahkamah untuk mahkamah issue summons untuk orang tertentu termasuk pihak siasatan, pihak polis untuk kemukakan dokumen-dokumen ini. So the person is required to produce property document shall be deemed to comply. Semua ni semua apa yang ada dalam CPC lah. However, there are uncertainties as to whether prosecution must give document to the accused as reflected in the following case. First case Teo Chun Tok. Case Teo Chun Tok, PPS against Teo Chun Tok, 1963, case tahun 63. A forgery case, the accused applied to be supplied with copies of the alleged forged documents. The police refused. Ini keadaan yang macam saya sebut tadilah, di mana pihak pembelaan yang nakkan dokumen tu. So dia buat permohonan kepada mahkamah. The accused applied to the magistrate who ordered the accused to be allowed to inspect and make copies of the document. So dia buat permohonan kepada mahkamah, mahkamah benarkan. The police appeal to the High Court. Polis pula tak puas hati dengan perintah oleh magistrate ni, dia merayu terhadap putusan ni ke mahkamah tinggi. So Hakim Hepworth, masih lagi hakim orang putih zaman tu, tahun 63, referred to then Section 59 of CPC, which is similar to Section 51 of CPC, and opined that the accused should be supplied with documents to enable him to prepare his defence. The court stated that the accused is entitled to copies of the document requested. However, it must be directed at the specific documents demanded, and the court held that, the rest you boleh baca lah, tapi prinsipal daripada kes ni, yang pentingnya, bila ada permohonan sedemikian, mahkamah sepatutnya benarkan. Mahkamah sepatutnya benarkan, tetapi bukan semua dokumen, spesifik dokumen sahaja. Specified document. Document or thing must be clearly specified. That is, it must indicate the document to be produced and should be given at such time as to afford the party a reasonable opportunity for producing the document at the trial. Bukan semua dokumen. Kenapa dalam kes ni disebut kat sini? Dia entitled because dalam kes ni, accused applied to be supplied with copies of the alleged forged documents. Ini kes forgery. Dia dituduh memalsukan dokumen. So, it's fair that dokumen yang dikatakan telah dipalsukan itu ataupun copies be made ataupun the defense be allowed to inspect, untuk assess apa dokumen yang dikatakan palsu ni. Saya dituduh memalsukan dokumen. Dokumen apa yang saya palsukan? So, I have a right to inspect that document. Tapi that dokumen sahajalah. Itu dalam kes Teo Chuntek. Teo Chuntek, bukan Teo Chuntok. Teo Chuntek. Dan kes ni followed dalam kes Abdul Ghani Ishak 114. Accused applied before the trial to be supplied with copies of documents seized by BSN. Masa dulu BSN lah, lepas tu dia jadi BTR. Sekarang ni dah jadi SPRN. And cited with approval the principles in Teo Chun Tok and allowed the accused to be supplied with copies of documents. Tapi terhadlah dokumen apa saja yang dia hadkan. Copies of documents seized by BSN which refused to comply. Further in the corruption case Syed Abu Bakar, dia lain sikit kat sini. George Sia refused to follow the principle dalam Teo Chun Tek dan Haji Abdul Ghani Ishak. In this case, there was application by the accused to inspect and make copies of all the documents in possession of the prosecution. Ingat kat sini, all documents. The application was made on the ground that the defence would not be able to prepare the defence adequately without the said documents. Ini yang saya sebut lebih awal tadi. Defence gunakan argument, all these documents that going to be used in evidence should be given to me because I nak prepare my defence. For me to prepare my defence. So apa George Sia kata? George Sia dismissed application and held that Section 51 of the CPC should be construed strictly, and it does not allow discovery of documents seized by the police before the trial. The learned judge also added that in the event the document tendered as evidence is complicated in nature, the defence can always apply for extra time or to stand down cross-examination. The judge adopted a strict approach to the interpretation of Section 51 of the CPC. His Lordship opined that the accused is not entitled to inspect documents before the trial but may do so during the trial. So dalam kes ni dia tak berapa, I would not say dia tak setuju, tapi dia tidak follow keseluruhan dalam kes Teo Chun Tek dengan Haji Abdul Ghani Ishak. Defence apply for documents. Dia kata tak boleh before the case. During the trial, documents tu boleh di-inspect. Before the trial, you got no right to inspect all the documents of the prosecution. Ini dalam kes Syed Abu Bakar bin Ahmad. Kemudian, so you have two situation here. Satu kata boleh, satu kata tak boleh. Tetapi yang kata boleh, Teo Chun Tek ni pun dia kata copies of document requested tu must be specific. Dia kena specifykan dokumen apa you nak. Bearing in mind this is a forgery case. Dalam Ghani Ishak ni, dalam Ghani Ishak dia kata boleh ambil je dokumen ni sebab dia kata dia follow Teo Chun Tek. Tapi dalam kes Syed Abu Bakar dia kata no. Dia tak boleh. So the answer, the development in the law selepas tu ada dalam kes Raymond Chia. Raymond Chia Kim Chui. Raymond Chia ni tahun 1985. Raymond Chia, also a case involving forgery. First applicant Raymond Chia made a general application for the production of documents. General application, dia minta semua dokumen yang ada pada pihak penawaran tu disupply pada dia sebelum bicara. The second applicant, Zainal bin Ajali, made an application for copies of specified and unspecified document. Dia punya second accused, dia specify dan ada juga unspecified document. Supreme Court held that the accused has a right to apply for summons under Section 51 of the CPC in respect of the supply of copy of document. However, the court has absolute discretion. Boleh buat application bawah Section 51, tapi discretion pada mahkamah. So question now, how do the court exercise this discretion? So, saya ringkaskan saja apa dia kata. Apa yang dia kata kat sini adalah discretion of the court to bagi, tetapi dalam exercising that discretion bukan bermakna semua boleh bagi. So mahkamah kena pilih yang mana boleh bagi, yang mana boleh bagi. Court has got to exercise its discretion and can only allow for certain documents sahaja to be provided for the defense. What are those documents that can be allowed? Okay, baca sikit di sini. The first thing to note is that the problem posed before this court arose out of criminal proceeding for the offence of forgery under section 467 and 461 of the Penal Code. Charge is for forgery, ingat tu. Forgery, bukan perjury, forgery. And therefore, the court which must consider whether the production of the material or document asked for is necessary or desirable. Asked for is necessary or desirable in the court. Tetap ada masalah grammar sikit kat sini. In the court before which the trial was pending or in which the trial is proceeding. So, dia kata pertama sekali the court can have to consider before allowing for the document whether these documents are necessary or desirable, bearing in mind that this is a case of forgery. The court judge then said the word person defined blah 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 blah, section 51 envisage a summons blah 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 blah. I agree with Tia J inside Abu Bakar that section 51 should be construed strictly. So strict interpretation of section 51. Although it appears to be so, that section is not intended to enable the defense in all criminal proceeding to ask for discovery of documents or inspection of documents from the prosecution before trial. From the language of this section, necessary or desirable for the purpose of any investigation, inquiry, trial, or proceeding, it is quite plain that the application under this section may be made before the commencement of a trial and in the course of a trial. In exercising discretion under section 51 of the Criminal Procedure Code, the court has to consider the justice of the case and at what stage of the proceeding investigation is made. Whether the court to ask to exercise discretion under section 51 CPC before commencement of a trial, ini isu sama ada application tu sebelum nak dibenarkan sebelum bicara atau semasa bicara, because dia follow George Sia dalam kes saya bakar strict interpretation dalam interpret section 51. Okey, saya skip sini sebab banyak dengan perkara-perkara yang bawah topik lain. The answer to question 2 and 3 is in the affirmative that a qualification that is an accused person has a right to apply for a summons under 51 of the CPC. Betul, dia kata accused boleh apply under section 51 CPC. But the issue of the summons is at the discretion of the court should the inquiry or trial is heard or pending. Mahkamah ada discretion. Where the application is made before commence or trial, the general rule document mentioned by supplemental material referred to in the charge. Itu yang pertama. Mesti dokumen yang disebut dalam pertuduhan. A general demand for unspecified materials or documents should not be entertained where the application is made in the course of inquiry. Trial, the court has to consider question of relevancy to the issue of education. So dia bagi pada dua peringkat. Kalau peringkat itu adalah peringkat sebelum bicara, accused ada is entitled, accused ada hak, is entitled to inspect or to have a copy of documents mentioned in the charge. So kalau charge adalah for perjury, so documents mentioned in the charge adalah dokumen yang berkait dengan kesalahan perjury. So dia ada right kat situ. So kalau permohonan itu dibuat semasa bicara, court kena tengok issue of relevancy. So di sini dalam kes Remencia ni, dia bersetuju dengan kes yang awal tu, tapi dia kata interpretation tu strict. Maknanya dia reconcile antara kes Gani Ishak dengan kes Teo Chun Tek, dia reconcilekan dengan Syed Abu Bakar. So ada dokumen yang boleh diberikan, ada dokumen tidak boleh diberikan kepada defense sebelum bicara. Sebelum bicara, dokumen yang boleh diberikan adalah yang disebut dalam pertuduhan itu. Of course, keadaan ni dah berubah sikit dah sekarang ni. Thus, summarily, the judge has held that the matters for application of Section 21, the court must consider the justice of the case and at what stage of proceeding application is being made. In application before the commencement of trial, Section 152, 52, 54 regarding framing charges must be considered. In the particular document is specified in the charge, then the prosecution must allow inspection of document by the accused to enable him to prepare his defense. Whereas an application during the trial, the strict rule of relevancy must be strictly enforced. For example, if the prosecution tenders a document which is relevant, the accused is entitled to a copy of it. General application of unspecified document should not be entertained. So itu keadaan dia mengikut kes Remencia macam saya sebut tadi, yang dimention dalam pertuduhan. Kalau dikemukakan semasa perbicaraan, dan dia pun boleh dapat satu salinan yang dokumen yang dikemukakan pada perbicaraan. Kemudian kes Datuk Tia Tee Kian tahun 2002, High Court held the accused may be entitled to copies of documents not specified in the charge if the charge is of a complex nature involving numerous documents. In this case, Sessions Court rejected application for the court summons Section 51 for inspection of certain documents not stated in the charge. Hishamuddin Yunus held that due to complicated nature of the charges, the complexity of the alleged transaction, the numerous documents involved, and the relevance of the documents of the charge as considered by the prosecution, the application for the 5 categories of documents should have been granted. The learned judge held that what was laid down by the Supreme Court in Remencia was only a general rule, and that is as a general rule, the accused is entitled to documents specified in the charge before trial. Thus, therefore, could be exceptions to the general rule and the accused is entitled documents not specified in the charge as in the case. So, case ini because of decision dalam the peculiar aspect dalam case ni lah, dalam case what they call Datuk Tia Tee Kian ni, because commercial cases, commercial crime punya cases, case yang melibatkan CBT, case yang melibatkan cheating ni, charge dia pun dah very complicated. So kadang-kadang tu because of the complexity of the charge, it doesn't make sense. It's not easy for one to understand unless documents yang dimention dan juga yang tak dimention disertakan bersama. So contohnya bahawa kamu telah melakukan cheating dengan menggunakan dokumen seperti dalam lampiran A. Dalam lampiran A itu disenaraikan banyak-banyak resip bayaran. So those are relevant. So patut diberikan. Dia kata apa yang dikatakan dalam Remencia tu general rule. Tetapi dalam kes ni, walaupun not specified in the charge, tetapi because of the complexity of the nature of the case, it should be given. So dia expand lagi di principle dalam Remencia. Okay, and then the case of Huze. Case of Huze ni caution statement and a caution statement applied to him. The court had dismissing application that exercises discretion in Section 51. The court has to consider justice of the case, secure sufficient notice allegation against him, supplied with caution statement which is relevant for him to prepare his defense. Uncaution statement is not admissible and evidence is not relevant for his defense. Ini berkenaan dengan intelligence statement lah. Ada dua statement dia ambil. Satu intelligence statement, the uncaution statement. Satu lagi is the caution statement which is under section 113. So yang the intelligence statement, the unquestioned statement seperti yang saya sebut tadi is not for the purpose of trial. Dia tak berhak untuk mendapatkannya because that's for the purpose of intelligence, police intelligence, not relevant to his defense. Case Aw Se Chan, the accused requested for discharge of Mounted Couture on the ground that the police had not supplied the documents as ordered by the court. The judge held that as the issue of documents had been the basis of the magistrate discharging the accused of Mounted Couture, Section 51 CPC takes prominence and ought to be discussed in depth. Thus, the learned judge has laid down the full compliance of this section. So, ni some rule macam mana nak supply dokumen bawah section 51 lah, document being reasonably regarded as forming part of the evidence rather than related proceeding CPC, court having issued summons to back up the order to produce, court believing the documents in possession. The judge has stated, looking at the above condition, is conspicuous that section 51 has a specific purpose with the primary object being production of anything that may reasonably be regarded as forming part of the evidence in this case. Thus, with regard to this relevant provision, the federal court confirmed that the right of each person for a document to be material in criminal proceeding under Section 51 is a right accessible by the court's discretion. Such must be in the form of summons and may be made before the commencement or trials of the court. So, apa berlaku dalam kes ni? Prosecution, defense minta dokumen, prosecution tak bagi. Just because prosecution tak bagi, they apply for discharge not amounting of acquittal, and the magistrate actually allowed the application for discharge not amounting to acquittal. Sepatutnya gunakan section 51 supaya the principles under section 51 regarding bila mahkamah boleh keluarkan perintah untuk kemukakan dokumen boleh apply. Raymond Chia still relevant and apply despite the new insertion section 51A. Ni kita nak masuk section 51A. Raymond Chia still relevant sebab actually prinsip dari Raymond Chia ni being expanded a little bit daripada kes macam Hishamuddin, the case Datuk Tia Tikian, tetapi tidak sampai kepada keadaan macam dalam kes Uzi. Dia incorporated into section 51A. So, kes yang berkaitan adalah kes Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim lah. So, apa berlaku dalam kes Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim yang 2010 ni? Appellant is appealing against the order made by the trial judge to produce original CCTV recordings to respondent. Court appeal held that discretion given in section 51 of the CPC should not be exercised to enable the accused to gain access to materials before trial, as in the case of pre-trial discovery and inspection of documents in the civil proceeding. Applying the strict test of relevancy case Raymond Chia, the court held that CCTV recordings are not relevant and the object of inspection is merely to fish out information. Okay, notwithstanding what has been discussed above section 51, CPC must now be read in the light of the new insertion under section criminal CPC, particular section 51A. Nevertheless, it must be pointed out section 51 of the CPC is still important despite the new insertion of section 51A, as the latter only requires the prosecution to deliver the accused a copy of any documents which the prosecution will tender as part of the evidence for the prosecution's case. Thus, for any document which the prosecution does not wish to tender as part of evidence for the prosecution's case, the accused may apply to the court to be supplied with a copy of any document by virtue of section 51 of the CPC. Okay, setakat bila adanya section 51, because of perkembangan daripada case law tadi, section 51 1A telah dimasukkan dalam CPC. You boleh tengok sendirilah section 51A dalam kita punya CPC. So, setakat mana pemakaian? How far does section 51A change the situation as issue pertama, how much does it change the situation under section 51 as decided by the case macam case Raymond Chia? And what is section 51A? Section 51A is actually about discovery of evidence before trial. This is actually a civil punya proses incorporated into criminal procedure untuk mempercepatkan perbicaraan, to expedite To expedite the trial, certain procedures in civil was incorporated into the CPC, and one of it is actually Section 51A. So under Section 51A, there is a process of discovery, limited discovery, I would say, where the prosecution must produce or must give to the defense these documents listed under Section 51A before the trial. Prosecution shall, before commencement of the trial, deliver to the accused person the following documents. Copy of information made under Section 107. Ini dah decided dalam kes awal-awal tadi, kes QCB dan sebagainya, entitled to a first information report. A copy of any document which will be tendered as part of evidence for the prosecution. This is an extension of the principle dalam Section 51. Dalam Section 51, Raymond Chia kata dokumen yang akan digunakan di dalam dokumen was referred to in the charge. Dokumen yang referred to in the charge. And usually referred to in the charge are documents which the prosecution will tender in the case lah. So dimasukkan di sini a copy of any document which will be tendered as part of the evidence for the prosecution. Dan seterusnya, a written statement of facts favorable to the defense of the accused signed on the hand of public prosecutor. So ini tak ada isu sangat. Because selalunya prosecutor kata tak ada facts yang favorable to the accused person. From my personal experience, saya belum jumpa lagi lah yang prosecution bagi information these are facts favorable to the accused person. Mungkin ada, but I have not come across it yet. So, tapi adalah kalau contrary to public interest tak boleh, kemudian dia tak boleh jadi inadmissible just because tak boleh tender, and then court may exclude document which is delivered in bad faith dan sebagainya. Tapi isu di sini macam saya cakap tadi, how much Section 51A has been amended, has amended Section 51. So the case, I think again, case yang relevan adalah pertamanya ni lah, kes Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim lagi sekali yang 2010, Court of Appeal analyse application of Section 51A of the CPC extensively. Prosecution appeal against the High Court's order for allowing most parts of the respondent's application to supply to the respondent with CCTV recording, DNA sample, case note of the chemist who conducted DNA testing and analysis, witness statement under 112, and other documents. Dalam lain perkataan, dalam kes Anwar Ibrahim ni, pihak pembelaan membuat permohonan untuk mendapatkan semua keterangan yang ada pada pihak pendakwaan. Statement 112 of the witnesses, chemist punya, bukan analisa chemist tu, meaning notes, chemist punya notes. Bila chemist buat analisa, dia buat notes. Notes chemist tu pun dia nak, DNA sample pun dia nak, CCTV recordings dia nak, everything and all other document. Trial judge did not allow the respondent's application for the production or inspection of DNA samples and swabs yang berkaitan dengan DNA sample dan notes chemist semua tu dia tak bagilah. The Court of Appeal upheld the order as Section 51 refers to document only. Further, for the supply of a worksheet, case note of chemist, the prosecution need to tender it to the accused. Need not tender it to the accused. So, Court of Appeal kata this document will not come under Section 51A 1B of the Code for the simple reason that the prosecution will not be tendering them in court as their evidence. Of course lah, chemist note tu takkan dikemukakan sebagai keterangan sebab chemist tu sendiri yang bagi keterangan. Chemist himself will be giving evidence. So dia punya notes tu is not important for the prosecution. Prosecution will not tender dia punya notes. So it's not evidence. It must be noted that the respondent requires those documents for the purpose of cross-examination. The chemist, when they are giving evidence, application for the production document only be made, blah 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 blah. Ini alasan digunakan lah. Dia kata untuk cross-examine chemist tu. Tapi court disagree with that. Now the more important part is statement made under 112. The High Court allowed the respondent to be supplied with certain witnesses statement made under Section 112 of the CPC. Ingat tadi saya kata kes awal tadi masa discussing apa dokumen yang boleh diberikan kepada pihak pembelaan. Semua dokumen made to a police officer termasuk Section 112 tak boleh bagi, tak boleh tender in evidence, cannot be used, bla 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 bla. Tetapi sekarang defense buat application under section 51 to be supplied with documents which consist of statements made by witnesses. Bukan semua witnesses lah. Statement made by witnesses. I think the star witness dalam kes ni lah. You know siapa, you pun tahulah siapa star witness dia. Statement made by witnesses to the police to be supplied to the defense before the trial. So, High Court allowed the respondent to be supplied with certain witnesses' statement made under section 112. However, the Court of Appeal disagreed. Bila High Court allow prosecution appeal to the Court of Appeal, and Court of Appeal say this. In respect of blah 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 production of witness statement, our decision that the judge has erred. Dia kata judge silap dalam kes. Stated earlier and based on the decision of Raymond Chia's case, learned judge had no jurisdiction to make such order under section 51 before the commencement of the trial. Ada discretion under section 51 untuk bagi statement witnesses. Macam saya cakap tadi, statement witnesses pada dasarnya tidak relevan, tidak boleh dikemukakan sebagai keterangan. Isunya sekarang ni boleh tak diberikan kepada pihak tertuduh. Dalam kes Husdi, clear dalam keputusan kes Husdi yang saya dah mention awal tadi, mahkamah kata tak boleh, section 112 boleh menyebabkan gangguan ke atas saksi dan sebagainya. Privilege dokumen, gangguan ke atas saksi, so statement 112 tidak boleh diberi. Dalam kes ni dia buat application under section 51. Dan dalam the High Court yang bicara tu membenarkan prosecution appeal. The Court of Appeal agree with the prosecution saying that section 51 doesn't cover 112 statement. Furthermore, as stated by Syed Osman FJ in Husdi's case, ni yang saya sebut tadi, Husdi's case, the statement made to the police in the course of police investigation is a privileged document. Further, as a matter of public policy, it is undesirable for the prosecution to supply the defense with police statements as there is a real danger of tampering with witnesses. Ini penting. Ini yang saya sebut awal tadi. Kalau statement 112 diberikan, dibenarkan tertuduh mendapat statement 112 daripada pihak polis, saksi-saksi itu sendiri dah terdedah kepada gangguan, terdedah kepada bahaya. I think tak payah, tak susah nak bayangkan dah. Kalau you dah tahu nanti nak bicara, dah tahu siapa yang akan beri keterangan, and you dah tahu apa benda pula keterangan yang dia nak bagi, sure you will use whatever means within you to get the witness not to say to court what he's supposed to say. Cukup untuk saya cakap macam tu je. So as a matter public policy, tak boleh dibagi statement 112. This is a reiteration of the principle dari section 51. Kemudian bla bla bla, with regard learned charge observation, defense should be supplied witness statements so the defense could find out what was said in the prosecution pursuant to section 41A1C was right or not. We will review that the issue can only be determined by the court after the commencement of the trial and after relevant witnesses have given evidence in court. The court could not anticipate how the prosecution case would prove. Ini menjawab hujah yang dikatakan oleh pihak pembelaan dalam kes itulah. Now, tertuduh dalam kes ni, pihak pembelaan dia masih lagi tak berpuas hati dengan keputusan daripada kes Court of Appeal dan dia pergi ke Federal Court. The Apex Court discussed on the issue whether the insertion of 51A CPC affects the established principle of section 51 of the CPC. So bila dia appeal to the Federal Court, now the Federal Court has to consider another question. Setakat mana section 51A telah meminda undang-undang di bawah section 51? Sebab kalau you tengok kepada decision High Court, decision Court of Appeal yang saya baca baru sekejap tadi, decision Court of Appeal dia refer kepada section 51. Dia kata witness statement tak termasuk di bawah section 51 dan dia refer kepada kes Husdi yang mengatakan is undesirable to allow witness statement be supplied to the defense. But ini berkaitan dengan section 51. Tetapi defense argue kata sekarang ada section 51A. So the next issue dekat Federal Court adalah to what extent has section 51A change or amend the law or affect the law under section 51. So apa Federal Court kata, kita tengok decision Abdul Hamid Ambung. Excuse me, sir. Sorry. To import the so-called philosophy behind Section 51A into Section 51 in the interpretation of the latter section in a liberal faction, as was done by the High Court, would be losing sight of the object of Section 51. It will be seen later in this judgment that the object of Section 51 is for a limited purpose. Its scope is restricted by law. In our view, the High Court judge had erred in law in adopting the above approach. By so doing, he had in effect expanded Section 1 CPC, 51 CPC, and had effectively changed the law. Changes in the law are for Parliament to decide, not the judiciary. Okay, apa maksud dia di sini? Saya cuba ringkas kat mana dia. Dia kata, apa yang Section High Court buat, High Court dalam kes ni lah, dalam kes Anwar Ibrahim ni, bila dia membenarkan permohonan bawah Section 51 tu, dia telah expand the scope of the application of Section 51 dengan interpreting it to liberal. Dia interpret secara liberal dan expand the scope of pemakaian dia. So, Abdul Hamid Embong kata itu bukan fungsi mahkamah. Fungsi mahkamah bukan untuk buat undang-undang baru. Itu fungsi parlimen untuk buat undang-undang baru. Mahkamah bukannya buat undang-undang baru. Dia tak boleh ubah undang-undang itu. Tak boleh ubah peruntukan Section 51. In our view, the learned judge was also wrong to say that earlier cases decided on Section 51 are no longer applicable. Having considered both sections, we agree for appeal that Section 51 and 51A are two separate and distinct provisions. Section 51 is a provision which imposes an obligation upon the prosecution to supply certain documents and material. It has no connection with Section 51, which gives the court discretion to allow for discovery in specific instances. Hence, Section 51 should be used in interpreting Section 51. Section 51A should be used in interpreting Section 51. Section 51 should thus be interpreted as it stands and taken to mean according to its plain and ordinary meaning and not differently read. Thus, Section 51 cannot now be modified with the aid of the so-called philosophy underlying Section 51A, even if such philosophy existed. So the apex ni comment daripada writer, the apex court has given Section 51 the strict interpretation. If the documents applied for does not fall within Section 51, the accused will have to apply for the said document via Section 51A or 51 of the CPC, in which case the strict test of relevancy as provided for in the case of Raymond Chia must be complied with. So, bila sampai pada court, Hamid Embong kata Section 51 dan Section 51A ni adalah dua section yang berlainan, terpakai dalam keadaan yang berlainan. Section 51A bukan menggantikan Section 51. So, tidak boleh interpret Section 51 itu dengan memasukkan Section 51A. Dan Section 51A itu adalah patut diterjemahkan mengikut ayat-ayatnya, plain and ordinary meaning. Section 51A itu hanya bertujuan untuk discovery. Apa dia dokumen-dokumen yang perlu dikemukakan, diberikan kepada pihak pembelaan sebelum bicara oleh pihak pendakwaan. Okey, pendakwaan ada dokumen ini nak digunakan dalam pembicaraan, so dia kena kemukakan kepada pembelaan dokumen-dokumen yang hendak digunakan sebagai keterangan dalam kes pendakwaan. Itu saja. It's for discovery only. So dia tidak boleh digunakan untuk interpret Section 51. Section 51 seperti yang kita tahu dah sebut banyak kali tadi, application made to court for a court order summons for any party to produce documents. It's not about discovery. Section 51A is about discovery. So Section 51 is for its own purpose, Section 51 for its own purpose. So macam mana pemakaian dua-dua Section 51 dan Section 51A yang kini sepatutnya diinterpret secara strict, bukannya liberal, semua boleh, macam dalam decision by the High Court dalam kes ni. So, sebelum pembicaraan, pendakwaan ada duty to supply dokumen di bawah Section 51A. So, kalau pihak pembelaan ada lagi dokumen-dokumen lain yang dia perlukan untuk tujuan defense dia, he can apply under Section 51. So, nampak tak dalam dua keadaan berlainan. Pendakwaan dah supply dokumen. Okay, I dah dapat dokumen dia. But I need some other document for the purpose of my defense now. And that document is either with the prosecution or with some other party. Then I can apply to court, make an application under section 51. So macam itulah. I hope I'm quite clear on that. Nonetheless, the federal court still hold that 51A is of mandatory obligation, mandatory untuk bagi, tetapi ada satu isu satu lagi lah. Is mandatory, wajib dipatuhi. It provides for mandatory obligation on the part of prosecution to supply to an accused person the first information report made under section 107. A copy of any document should be part of prosecution's case and any statement of facts favorable to the defense with a safeguard on public interest consideration. So wajib. Tetapi macam mana kalau ianya tak dipatuhi? So kalau ianya tidak patuhi, timbul satu persoalan. Boleh tak kemudian dokumen itu digunakan oleh pihak pendakwaan semasa perbicaraan? Okay, you have a piece of document. Dokumen ini is your evidence yang you perlu gunakan untuk establish a prima facie case. This document you simpan, did not supply it to the defense. Tapi masa bicara baru you nak produce. So the defense has been deprived of an opportunity to inspect the document which contains evidence against him and not able to prepare dia punya defense. So boleh tak sekarang ni mahkamah kata no, you cannot produce that document anymore because you have not given a copy to the defense before trial in compliance with section 51A. So kita tengok isu ni. Li Luqiang against PP, kes tahun 2010. Was held that section 51A must be complied with before trial, applying the stance of federal court in Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. The learned High Court judge also ordered that the trial would not commence until the said section is complied with. So tak boleh start until dah supply dokumen tu semua. Blah 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 blah. Saya nak cari bahagian. Nonetheless, in example, of the stress and mandatory obligation to produce document section 51 CPC was applied for decision. Literature is not open. Saya apply ini interpreted ni. Nak jawab soalan saya tadi, kes Sek Kek Chuan 2013. Appeal against decision High Court convicting sentencing appellant for every offence committed section 29B. The court allowed appeal and section 31A the Registrar Act. Appeal against decision High Court. The court allowed appeal. Abdul Malik Isa, including judgment court, stated that section 51A CPC makes reference to the delivery of certain documents to the appellant by the prosecution and is still in its infancy stage. It relates to pre-trial disclosure of evidence by the prosecution. If documents are not supplied to the defense in accordance with section 51A, the prosecution is not barred from tendering those documents and the defense may be given time to study those documents. Maknanya, in the event the prosecution fails to comply with section 51, prosecution's case would be jeopardized if the trial court refused to condone the non-compliance section 51 pada section 51 blah 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 blah. Documents are not supplied to the defense in accordance with section 51A, the prosecution is not barred from tendering those documents. I'm a bit confused with the next paragraph, what the author of this book said. In event prosecution fails to comply with position section 51A of the CPC, the prosecution's case would be jeopardized if the trial court refuses to condone the non-compliance section 51A by the prosecution. So the decision, federal court would not commence until the said session was complied with. Kena tengoklah decision dalam Li Luqiang. Tapi dalam kes Sek Kok Chuan, apa yang penting di sini adalah bila dinyatakan kalau pihak pendakwaan tidak berikan satu salinan dokumen itu kepada defense sebelum perbicaraan, they were not barred. Dia tidak dihalang daripada mengemukakan semasa perbicaraan. You see or not? Sebelum perbicaraan tak bagi dokumen tu kepada defense. Boleh tak sekarang kemukakan semasa perbicaraan? So kalau ikut decision ni, boleh. not barred from tendering those document. Tetapi teguran daripada kes Li Luqiang ni sepatutnya, dan juga dalam kes Sekuan ni sepatutnya defense diberikan masa. Boleh dikemukakan tetapi defense patut diberikan masa untuk inspect the document. Dalam lain perkataan kena postpone trial. Postpone the trial so that the defense has got time to actually look into these documents. Kenapa? Sebab dokumen ini ada satu yang baru. They were taken by surprise. You never know that this document existed. So sekarang ni tiba-tiba dokumen ni muncul, we have to actually reconsider our defense. Kita relook balik kita punya defense. So for that purpose, the court should allow for the defense to actually time to look into the document, because prosecution tak kemukakan, tak berikan mereka salinan sebelum perbicaraan itu, tapi hanya kemukakan semasa perbicaraan. That's my own interpretation of daripada kes Li Luqiang dengan Sek Kap Chuan. Okay. Now kita pergi kepada tarus. Basically dah habis lah topik ni. Kalau you tengok daripada textbook ni, kat muka surat 199 tu, condition of factors for admissibility of statements, dia lagi sekali sebut pasal statement by accused persons. Ini adalah sambungan kepada tajuk sebelum ni, admissibility of statements. Admissibility of statement, so dia ulang lagi sekali di muka surat 199. Admissibility of statement 172, which I talked about earlier. So disambung pula di muka surat 199 berkaitan dengan statements made to the police. Statements made to the police lah sebelum diterima, boleh diterima dalam keterangan. Dan ini berkait juga dengan cases seperti 113 dan sebagainya. Okey. Homework untuk ganti tutorial. Kali ini saya nak bagi you all satu homework. Topik berkenaan dengan police investigation dah habis. So kita continue nanti with the next topic, which is about powers of the public prosecutor dan sebagainya lah, yang berkaitan dengan institution of proceeding. Institution of proceedings bermula dengan the powers of the public prosecutor. Dah habis polis, public prosecutor pula. Kalau you tengok dulu kan ada laporan polis dibuat, apa tindakan polis selepas laporan polis dibuat, lepas tu siasatan oleh pihak polis, selepas siasatan pihak polis, IP tadi, investigating papers yang saya sebut tu, will be handed over to the deputy public prosecutor who's carrying out the powers of the public prosecutor. So apa pula yang deputy public prosecutor kena buat apabila hasil investigation by the police tu given to him in the form of an IP? What are the things yang dia kena buat, dan apa kuasa yang dia ada, what the powers available to him. That's going to be the next topic. So now for homework senang aja. Senang in the sense that because all we have to do is actually baca balik apa yang saya dah beritahu, apa yang dah refer balik. And then ini termasuklah juga isu yang saya sengaja tak cerita, tak habiskan ni, because that will be the topic of your next assignment. So your assignment ataupun short test dia, tajuk dia macam ni. What is a caution statement? And what are the conditions for a caution statement to be admitted as evidence in court against the accused person? What is a caution statement? And what are the conditions for a caution statement to be admitted as evidence in court against the accused person? Atau terjemahkan, apa itu satu pernyataan beramaran dan apakah syarat-syarat untuk satu pernyataan beramaran itu diterima di mahkamah sebagai keterangan terhadap tertuduh. Okay. So jawapan dia jangan, tak payah tulis panjang-panjang, tulis tak lebih daripada 1000 perkataan. So 1000 perkataan selalunya dalam 2 atau 3 page lah, lebih kurang 3 page dalam 1000 perkataan. Dan assignment tu you emailkan kepada saya pada atau sebelum, sekejap, mana kalender, pada atau sebelum 14, 15 lah, 15 hari bulan Julai, 2 minggu daripada sekarang. Hari ini 1 hari bulan, hari ini 1 hari bulan, 15 hari bulan Julai, 2 minggu daripada sekarang. So you tuliskan this assignment and email it to me pada atau sebelum tarikh 15 Julai, 2 weeks from now. Buat dalam 1000 perkataan. Tajuk dia, what is a caution statement and what are the conditions for a caution statement to be admitted as evidence in court against the accused person. So I think saya dah cerita dah dekat you apa itu caution statement. Caution statement actually perkataan popular yang digunakan di mahkamah terhadap DO Section 113, Section 37 DDA, Section 53 MACC Act, Section 16 Kidnapping Act. So ada banyak isu yang berkaitan dengan kebolehterimaan di section lah. So isu dia sama ada oral or written in the hearing of police inspector, penggunaan interpreter, masalah language. Lepas tu tentang amaran itu sendiri, the caution itu sendiri, and also the issue of voluntariness. And ingat apa yang saya kata tadi, caution statement mungkin ada dua, inculpatory, exculpatory, dan juga kedua-duanya sekali. So a caution statement can be inculpatory, can be exculpatory. A caution statement inculpatory meaning that a caution statement that incriminates himself. Ataupun caution statement exculpatory, caution statement yang mengatakan saya tak salah, dia tak buat, yang menolak kesalahan dia, menafikan kesalahan. So the prosecution usually will want to use an inculpatory caution statement, but the defense wants to use an exculpatory caution statement. Tapi soalan ini adalah berkaitan dengan penggunaan dalam mahkamah terhadap tertuduh itu sendiri, bukan oleh tertuduh. So it should be inculpatory statement. Tapi you kena ingat, kadang-kadang satu caution statement tu mempunyai dua sekali, partly inculpatory, partly exculpatory. Dia dituduh melakukan satu kesalahan, sebahagian dia mengaku, sebahagian lagi dia tak mengaku. So sebahagian itu adalah boleh digunakan oleh pihak pendakwa terhadap dia, sebahagian lagi tidak boleh digunakan. So itu sajalah perkara-perkara yang saya would like to see your answers, to be discussed in your answers. And also jangan lupa assignment. And kita akan jumpa lagi next video atau topik yang seterusnya. So for now, setakat ni dulu. And I finish off with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.